You know, don't you?
Yes, we know.
Eric, I can't believe it. There must be some mistake. You don't know what we've been saying.
It's a good job for him, isn't it?
Why?
Well, because Mother's been busy blaming everything on the young man who got this girl into trouble and saying he shouldn't escape and should be made an example of.
That's enough, Sheila.
You haven't made it any easier for me, have you, Mother?
But I didn't know it was you. I never dreamt. Besides, you're not the type. You don't get drunk. You don't.
Of course he does. I told you he did.
You told her? Little sneak.
No, Eric, that's not fair. I could have told her months ago, but of course I didn't. I only told her tonight because I knew everything was coming out. It was simply bound to come out tonight. So I thought I might as well let her know in advance. And don't forget, I've already been put through it.
Sheila, I simply don't understand your attitude tonight.
Neither do I. If you had any sense of loyalty for this family.
Just a minute, Mr. Birling. There will be plenty of time when I'm gone for you all to adjust your family relationships, but now I must hear what your son has to tell me. And I'll be obliged if you let us get on without any further interruptions. Now then, young man.
Could I have a drink first?
No!
And I would say yes, and I know, Mr. Birling, he's your son and this is your house, but look at the state of him. He needs a drink now just to see him through.
All right, Eric, go on. I understand now a lot of things that I didn't understand before.
Please, Mr. Birling, I would like to get to know what your son has to say. So, when did you first meet this girl?
One night, must have been last November.
And where did you meet her?
In the Palace Bar. I'd been there an hour or so with 2 or 3 other chaps. I was a bit squiffy.
And what happened after that?
Well, I began talking to her. Stood her a few drinks. I was rather far gone by the time we had to go.
Was she drunk as well?
She told me afterwards that she was a bit, chiefly because she's not had much to eat that day.
Why had she gone there in the first place?
Well, she wasn't the usual sort, but I suppose she didn't know exactly what to do. There was a woman who wanted to help her go there. I never quite understood that. what she meant.
Right. And you went with her to her lodgings that night.
Yes. In fact, I insisted, it seems. I'm not very clear about that, but afterwards she told me she didn't want me to go in. Well, you see, I was in that state a chap easily turns nasty, and I threatened to make a row.
So she let you in.
Yes, and that's when it happened. I don't even remember it. That's the hellish thing about it. God, it must sound so stupid.
Oh, Eric, how could you?
Sheila, take your mother along to the drawing room.
But I want to stay.
You heard what I said. Go with her, Sybil.
All right.
When did you meet her again?
About a fortnight afterwards.
Was it by appointment?
No, and I couldn't even remember her name or even where she lived. It was all very vague. But I happened to see her again in the palace bar.
More drinks?
Yes, but this time I wasn't so bad.
But you took her home again, didn't you?
Yes. And this time around we talked a bit. She told me something about herself, and I talked too. She finally told me her name, and I told her what I did.
And you made love again.
Yes. I wasn't in love with her or anything, but I did like her. She was pretty and a good sport. I mean,
Pretty and a good sport, so you just had to go to bed with her because of that.
well, I'm old enough to be married, aren't I? And I'm not. And I hate these fat old tarts around the town. The ones I see some of your respectable friends with.
I don't want any of that kind of talk
And
from
I
you
do
boys.
not want any of that kind of talk from any of you. Settle it afterwards. Young man, did you arrange to see each other after that?
Yes. And the next time, or the time after that, rather, she told me she was going to have a baby. She wasn't quite sure in the beginning, but then she was.
And of course she was terribly worried about it.
Yes, and so was I, naturally. I was in a hell of a state about it.
Did she suggest that you ought to marry her?
No, she didn't want me to marry her. She said I didn't love her and all that. Now that I think about it, in a way she treated me as if I were a child. Though I was nearly as old as she was.
So what did you propose to do?
Well, she didn't have a job and didn't feel like trying again for one. And she'd had no money left, so I insisted on giving her enough to keep her going until she refused to take any more.
Well, how much did you give her altogether?
Suppose all told about £50.
50 pounds on top of all your drinking and going around the town? Where on earth did you get 50 pounds from?
That's my question as well.
I got it from the office.
The office. My office?
Yes.
You mean you stole the money?
Not really.
What do you mean, not really?
This isn't my fault.
I'm sorry, Arthur, but I simply couldn't stay in there. I have to know what's happening.
Well, I can tell you precisely what's happening. Our boy just admitted he was responsible for the girl's condition, and now he's telling me he supplied her with money he stole from my office.
Eric, you stole money?
No, not really. I fully intended to pay it back.
Pay it back? Of course, we've heard that story before. How? How could you pay it back?
I would have managed somehow. I had to have some money stashed somewhere.
I don't even understand how you could take so much money without me or somebody noticing.
Well, there were some small accounts to collect, and I asked for cash. So.
Gave the firm's receipt and kept the money, eh?
Yes.
You will give me a list of each and every one of those accounts so I can cover up this mess you've made, you damn fool! Why didn't you come to me when you found yourself in this mess?
Because you're not the kind of father a chap could go to when he's in trouble. That's why.
Don't talk to me like that. Your trouble is your entire life.
And my trouble is, Mr. Birling, that I'm running out of time. You, as I've mentioned before, be able to divide the responsibility between you when I'm gone. Just one last question for you. Yeah, and then that's all. The girl discovered that this money you were giving to her was stolen, didn't she?
Yes, that's the worst part. She wouldn't even take any more, and she didn't even want to see me again. How did you even know that? Did she tell you?
No, she told me nothing. I never spoke to her.
She told Mother.
Sheila!
Well, he has to know.
She told you? Did she come here? But then she couldn't. She didn't even know I lived here. So what happened? Go on then, don't just look like that. Tell me. What happened?
I will tell you what happened. She went to your mother's committee for help after she had been done with you. Your mother refused that help.
Then you killed her. She came to you to protect me, and you turned her away? Yes, and you killed her. And the child should have
Eric.
too. My child, your own grandchild. You killed them both. Damn you.
No, Eric,
Eric.
please. I didn't know. I didn't even understand back then.
You don't understand anything. You never did. You never even tried. You
Don't, please.
Why, you hysterical young fool? Get back right now.
Enough! And be quiet for a moment and listen to me. I do not need to know any more, and neither do you. This girl killed herself and died a horrible death. But each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. And never forget it. But then, I do not think you ever will. Remember what you did, Mrs. Birling. You've turned her away when she most needed help. You refused her even the pitch of a little bit of organized charity you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did.
God, I'm not likely to forget.
Of course not. You just used her for the end of a stupid drunken evening as if she were an animal, not a person. No. And you won't forget either, Miss Birling.
I know. I had her turn out of a job. I started it.
You helped, but you did not start it. You started it, Mr. Birling. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and 6 pence, but you made pay a heavy price for that. And now she'll make you pay a heavier price still.
Look, Inspector, I'd give thousands, yes, thousands of pounds only.
Yes, Mr. Birling, thousands and thousands. But you're offering the money at the wrong time. No. I don't think any of you will forget. Or that young man, Mr. Croft, though. He at least had some affection for her and made her happy for a time. Well, Eva Smith, she's gone. You can't do her any more harm, but you can't do her any good now, either. You can't even say, I'm sorry, Eva Smith.
Yes, that's the worst of it.
But just remember this. One Eva Smith is gone, but there are millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us, with their lives, their hopes and fears, their suffering and chance of happiness, all intertwined with our lives and what we think and say and do. We do not live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for one another. And I tell you that the time will soon come when if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught in fire, blood, and anguish. Good night.
He's gone. Eric, you're the one I blame for all of this.
I bet I am.
Yes, and you don't even realize yet all you've done. Imagine most of this is bound to come out. There'll be a public scandal.
Well, I don't care now.
You don't seem to care about anything, but I care. I was almost certain for a knighthood in the next honors list.
Knighthood, for God's sake. What does it matter now, whether they give you a knighthood or not?
It doesn't matter to you, of course. Apparently nothing matters to you. But it may interest you to know, boy, that until every last penny is repaid, you'll work for nothing. And there's going to be no more of this drinking around the town and picking up women in the palace bar. How dare you?
Not. I should think not, Eric. I'm absolutely ashamed of you.
Well, I don't blame you, Mother. But don't forget, I'm ashamed of you as well. Yes, both of you.
Oh, drop that. There's every excuse for what both your mother and I did. It turned out unfortunately, that's all.
That's all.
Well, Sheila, do you have something to say?
I don't know where to begin.
Then don't begin. Nobody wants you to.
I behaved badly too. I know I did, and I'm absolutely ashamed of it. But now you're beginning it all over again, pretending like absolutely nothing happened.
Absolutely nothing happened? Are you even listening to yourself? Haven't I already said there'll be a public scandal unless by some miracle we're lucky, and who here will suffer from that more than I will?
But that's not what I am talking about. I don't care about that. The point is, you don't seem to have learned anything.
Don't I? Well, you're quite wrong there. I've learned plenty tonight. And you don't want me to tell you what I've learned, I hope. When I look back on tonight, when I think of what I was feeling when the five of us first sat down at that table.
Yes, you remember what you said to Gerald and me after dinner, when you were feeling so pleased with yourself? You told us that a man has to make his own way and look after himself and mind his own business, and that we weren't to take any notice of these cranks who tell us that everybody has to look after everybody else, as if we were all mixed up together. Do you remember? Yes, and lo and behold, one of those cranks walked in. The inspector? Oh, I didn't notice you told him it's every man for himself.
Is that when the inspector came? Just after Father said that?
Yes, well, what about it?
No. What's the matter, Sheila?
It's queer. Very queer.
I know what you're going to say. Because I've been wondering myself.
Well, it doesn't much matter now, of course, but was he really a police inspector?
Well, if he wasn't, it matters a devil of a lot. It makes all the difference.
No, it doesn't.
Don't talk rubbish, Sheila. Of course it does.
Well, it doesn't to me, and it oughtn't to you either.
Don't be childish, Sheila.
I don't think I'm being childish. If you want to know, it's you too who are being childish, trying not to face the facts.
I won't have any of that sort of talk, Sheila. Any more of that and you leave this room.
Ah, yes, because that'll be very terrible for her, won't it?
I'm going in a few minutes anyway. But don't you see? If all that's come out tonight is true, then it doesn't much matter who it was who made us confess. And it was true, wasn't it? You turned the girl out of a job, and I had her turned out of another. Gerald kept her at a time when he was supposed to be busy to see me. Well, and Eric, we all know the value of your contribution. And Mother hardened her heart and gave her the final push that finished her. That's what's important, and not whether a man is a police inspector or not.
It was our police inspector, all right.
That's what I mean, Eric. But if it's any comfort to you, and note that it isn't to me, I have an idea. And I had it all along vaguely that there was something curious about him. He never seemed quite like a police inspector.
You're right, Sheila. I felt the same way. Didn't you, Sybil?
Well, I must say his manner was quite extraordinary, so rude and assertive towards us.
Yes, and then look at the way he talked to me, telling me to shut up and so on. He must have known I was an ex-Lord Mayor and a magistrate and so forth. Besides, the way he talked, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, they don't talk like that. I've had dealings with dozens of them.
All right. But it doesn't make any real difference, you know.
Of course it does, Sheila.
No, Sheila's right. It doesn't.
Oh.
That's comic, that is, coming from you. You're the one that makes the most difference to Eric. You've confessed to theft, and now he knows all about it. And he can bring it out at the inquest and, if necessary, carry it to court. He can't do anything to your mother and Sheila and I, except perhaps make us look a bit ashamed of ourselves in public. But as for you, he can ruin you.
We hardly ever told him anything he didn't know. Did you notice that?
That's nothing. He had a bit of information left by the girl in her diaries and made a few smart guesses. But the fact remains that if we hadn't talked so much, he'd have little to go on. And really, when I come to think of it, why did you all let it out so quickly?
It's all right talking like that now. But he made us confess.
He certainly didn't make me confess, Sheila, as you call it. I told him quite plainly that I thought I had done no more than my duty.
Mother.
The fact is, you allowed yourselves to be bluffed. Yes, bluffed.
Oh, now really, Arthur.
No, not you, my dear, but these two. That fellow obviously didn't like us. He was prejudiced from the start. Must be some socialist or some sort of crank. Sure talked like one. And then, instead of standing up to him, you let him bluff you into talking about your private affairs. You ought to have stood up to him.
Oh, I didn't notice you standing up to him.
How could I? By that time you admitted you'd been taking money. What chance had I after that? Oh, I was a fool not to insist upon seeing him alone.
Well, that wouldn't have worked.
Of course
Really,
it wouldn't.
from the way you children talk, you might be wanting to help him instead of us. Now just be quiet so that your father can decide what we ought to do.
Oh, yes, well, we'll have to do something and get to work quickly, too.
I hope you don't mind my coming back.
No, of course not, Gerald.
I had a special reason for coming. When did that inspector go?
Only a few minutes ago. He put us all through it.
Sheila.
Gerald might as well know.
Now, Sheila, we needn't bother Gerald with all that stuff.
All right. But Gerald, we're all in it, up to the neck. It got much worse after you left.
How did he behave?
It was frightening, really.
If you ask me, he behaved in a very peculiar and suspicious manner.
Oh, the rude way he spoke to Mr. Birling and me. It was quite extraordinary, Gerald.
You
know something, Gerald? What is it? Out with it.
That man was not a police officer.
What?
Are you certain?
I'm almost certain. That's what I came back to tell you.
Good lad. You asked about him, eh?
Yes, I met the police sergeant I know down the road. I asked him about this Inspector Goole and described the chap carefully to him. He swore there wasn't any Inspector Goole or anybody like him on the force here.
But now, Gerald, you didn't tell him
Oh,
about
no,
the...
no, no, no. I passed it off by saying I'd be having an argument with somebody. But the point is, the sergeant was dead certain that they hadn't had any inspector like that in, well, never.
By jingo! A fake!
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I say I couldn't imagine a real police inspector talking like that to us?
Well, you were right. There isn't any such inspector. We've been had.
Well, I'm going to make certain of this.
What are you going to do, Arthur?
Ring up the chief constable, Colonel Roberts.
Careful what you say, dear.
Of course. Bromley 8752. I was going to call anyhow. I've had my suspicions all along. Hello, I'd like to speak to Colonel Roberts, please. This is Mr. Arthur Birling. Thank you. Oh, Roberts, this is Birling. Sorry to ring you up so late, but could you tell me if an Inspector Goole has joined your staff recently? That's Goole, Goole. New man, peculiar fellow with long hair and a beard and speaks really slowly. I see. Yes. Well, that settles it then. Oh, no such thing. Just a little argument we were having here. Good night, Roberts. There's no Inspector Goole on the police force. That man definitely wasn't a police inspector at all. As Gerald says, we've been had.
Oh, I felt it all the time. He never talked like one. Oh, he never even looked like one.
This makes a difference, you know. It makes all the difference.
Of course.
I suppose we're all nice people now.
If you've nothing more sensible to say, Sheila, you'd better keep quiet.
But she's right, though.
And you'd better keep quiet anyhow, Eric. If that was a real police inspector and he'd heard you confess to...
Arthur, careful, please.
Yes, my dear, yes.
You see, Gerald, you haven't know the rest of the crimes and idiocies.
That's all right. I don't want to. Now, Mr. Birling, what do you think of this business? Was it a hoax?
Has to be. Somebody put that fellow up to come here and hoax us. You know, there are people in this town who dislike me enough to do that. We ought to have seen through it from the start, and in an ordinary way, I believe I would have done, but him storming in like that, bang on top of our little celebration, just when we were all feeling so pleased with ourselves, it simply took me by surprise.
I wish I'd been here when that man first arrived. I'd have asked him at least a few questions before allowing him to ask us any.
It's all right saying that now.
Well, Sheila, I was the only one of you who didn't give in to him. And now, I repeat, we must discuss this business quietly and sensibly and decide if there's anything to be done about it.
You're absolutely right, my dear. We've already discovered one important fact, that the fellow was a fraud and we've been hoaxed. And that may not be the end of it by any means.
I'm sure it isn't.
Oh, so you are, eh? Good. Eric, would you stop fidgeting so much?
I'm all right.
All right. You're anything but all right, and you needn't stand there so far from us as if
As if what?
as if you have nothing to do with us. Just remember your position, young man. If anybody's up to the neck in this business, you are. So you'd better take some interest in it.
I do take some interest in it. I take too much interest in it. That's the issue.
That's mine too.
Now listen, you two. If you're still feeling on edge, then the least you can do is keep quiet. Leave this to us. I'll admit that the fellow's antics rattled us a bit, but now we've found him out. And what we have to do is keep our heads. It's our turn now.
Our turn to do what exactly?
To behave sensibly, Sheila, which is more than what you're doing.
Jesus Christ, what's the use of talking about behaving sensibly? You're beginning to pretend now that nothing's really happened at all. And I can't see it like that. This girl's still dead, isn't she? Nobody's brought her back to life, have they?
That's just what I feel, Eric. And that's what they don't seem to understand.
Look, whoever that chap was, the fact remains that I did what I did, and Mother did what she did, and the rest of you did what you did to her. It's still the same rotten story where it's been told to a police inspector or to somebody else. According to you, I had to feel a lot better. Look, Gerald, I stole some money.
Eric,
Might as
Eric.
well know. I don't care. Let him know. All right? The money's not the important thing. It's what happened to the girl and what we all did to her that matters. And I still feel the same way about it. That's why I don't feel like sitting down and having a nice, cozy talk.
And Eric's absolutely right. And it's the best thing any of us has said tonight. And it makes me a bit less ashamed of us. You're just beginning to pretend all over again.
Look, you two. For God's sake!
Arthur!
Well, my dear, they're just so damn exasperating. They just don't try to understand the difference between a lot of this stuff just staying private and all of it coming out in a public scandal.
Public scandal? And I say the girl is dead and we all helped to kill her. And that's what matters.
And I say either stop shouting or get out! Some fathers I know would have kicked you out of the house anyhow by this time. So hold your tongue if you want to stay here.
I don't give a damn about whether I stay here or not.
Oh, you'll stay here. You'll stay here just long enough to give me an account of all that money you stole. Yes, and pay it all back to every last penny.
But that won't bring back Eva Smith, will it?
And it won't alter the fact that we all helped to kill her.
Right.
But is it a fact?
Of course it is. Look, Gerald, you don't even know the whole story yet.
I suppose you're going to prove now you didn't even spend last summer keeping this girl instead of seeing me, huh, Gerald?
I did keep a girl last summer. I've admitted it. And I'm sorry, Sheila.
Well, I must admit you came out of it much better than the rest of us. The inspector said that too.
He wasn't an inspector.
But he inspected us all right. And don't let us start dodging and pretending now. Between us, we turned this girl to commit suicide.
Did we? Who says so? Because I say there's no more real evidence we did than that chap was an inspector.
Of course there is.
No, there isn't. Look at it. A guy comes here pretending to be a police officer. It's a hoax of some kind. Now, what does he do? Very artfully working on bits of information he's picked up here and there, he bluffs us into confessing that we've all been mixed up in this girl's life in one way or another.
And so we have been.
But how do you know it's the same girl?
Now, wait a minute. How would that work? No, it wouldn't.
We all admitted it.
All right. You all admit it's something to do with the girl. But how do you know it's the same girl? Look, Mr. Birling, you sack a girl called Eva Smith. You've forgotten. But he shows you a photograph of her, and then you remember, right?
Yes, that part's straightforward enough, but what of it?
Well, then he happens to know that Sheila once had a girl sacked from Millwards. He tells us that it's the same Eva Smith, and he shows her a photograph that she recognizes.
Yes, the same photograph.
How do you know it's the same photograph? Did you see the one your father saw?
No, no, I didn't.
And did your father see the one he showed you?
No, he didn't. And I see what you mean now, but
We've no proof. It was the same photograph, and therefore no proof it was the same girl. Now, listen to me. I never saw a photograph, remember? He caught me out by suddenly announcing that this girl changed her name to Daisy Renton. I gave myself away at once, because I'd known a Daisy Renton.
And there isn't even the slightest proof that this Daisy Renton of his was really Eva Smith. We only had his word for it, and it was only his word that he had that he was a police inspector. And we know now that he was lying about that. So he could have been lying all along.
Of course he could. Probably was. Now, what happened after I left?
I was upset because Eric had left the house, and this man said that if he didn't come back, he'd have to go and find him. Well, that made me feel worse still. His manner was so severe and he seemed so confident. Then, quite suddenly, he said I'd seen Eva Smith only 2 weeks ago.
Yes, those were his exact words.
And like a fool, I said yes, I had.
I don't see now why you did that. She didn't call herself Eva Smith when she came to see you at the committee, did she?
No, of course she didn't, but feeling so worried when he suddenly turned on me with those questions, well, I answered more or less as he wanted me to answer.
But Mother, don't forget that he showed you a photograph of this girl before that. And you obviously recognized her.
Did anybody else see it?
No, he showed it only to me, Gerald.
Well, then don't you see? There's still no proof it was really the same girl. He might have shown you the photograph of any girl who applied to the committee. And how do we know she was really Daisy Renton or Eva Smith?
Gerald's dead right. He could have used a different photograph each time and we'd be none the wiser. We may all have been recognizing different girls.
Exactly. Eric, did he ask you to identify a photograph?
No, he didn't even need a photograph by the time it got round to me. But obviously it must have been the girl I knew who went to see Mother.
Why must it?
Well, she said she needed help because she wouldn't take any more stolen money. And the girl I knew had told me that already.
Even then, that may have all been just nonsense.
I don't see much nonsense about it when a girl goes and kills herself. You lot may be letting yourselves out nicely, but I can't. In fact, not can Mother. We did her in all right.
Wait a minute, Eric. Don't be in such a hurry to put yourself into court. That interview with your mother could have been just as much a put-up job like all this police inspector business. The whole damn thing from start to end can have been a piece of bluff.
How can it be? The girl's dead, isn't she?
What girl? There were probably 4 or 5 different girls.
That doesn't matter to me. The one I knew is dead.
Is she? How do we know she is?
That's right. You've got it. How do we know any girl killed herself today?
Now answer that one. Let's look at it from this fellow's point of view. We're having a quiet little celebration here and feeling rather pleased with ourselves. Now he has to work his trick on us. Well, the first thing he has to do is give us such a shock that after that he can bluff us all along. So he starts right off. A girl has just died in the infirmary. She drank some strong disinfectant, died in agony after
All
hours.
right, don't pile on.
There you are, you see, just repeating it shakes you a bit. And that's exactly what he had to do. Shake us at once, then start questioning us, until we didn't even know where or what, left from right. Oh, let's admit that. He had the laugh of us all right.
He's probably laughing his head off right now. If I knew it was really all a hoax.
Oh, I'm convinced it is, Eric. No police inquiry, no girl that all of this happened to, no scandal.
Suicide?
We can settle that at once.
How?
By ringing up the infirmary. Either there's a dead girl there, or there isn't.
It will look a bit odd, though, won't it, Gerald, ringing up at this time about a dead girl?
I don't mind doing it.
And if there isn't...
Anyway, we'll see. Bromley 896. Is that the infirmary? This is Mr. Gerald Croft of Crofts Limited. Yes. We're rather worried about one of our employees. Have you had any girl brought in this afternoon who committed suicide by drinking disinfectant? Or any like suicide? Yes, I'll wait. Yes. You're certain of that? I see. Well, thank you very much. Good night. No girl has died in there today. Nobody's been brought in after drinking disinfectant. They haven't had a suicide in months.
There you are, proof positive. The whole story is just a lot of moonshine, nothing but an elaborate sell. Oh, nobody likes to be sold as badly as that, but for all that... Gerald, have a drink.
Thanks, I think I could just do with one now.
Oh, so could I.
Oh, and I must say, Gerald, you've argued this very cleverly, and I'm most grateful.
Well, you see, while I was out of the house, I'd had some time to cool off and think a bit.
Yes, he didn't keep you on the run as he did with the rest of us. I will admit now that the fellow gave me a bit of a scare at the time. But I did have a special reason for not wanting any public scandal just now. Well, here's to us, everyone. Oh, come on, Sheila, don't look like that. It's all over now.
The worst part is that you're forgetting one thing I still can't forget. Everything we said had happened. Really had happened. If it didn't end tragically, then that's lucky for us. But it might have done.
But Sheila, the whole thing's different now. Come, you can see that, can't you? You all helped kill her. And I wish you could have seen the look. The look on your faces when he said that. Going to bed already, Sheila?
I want to get out of this. It frightens me the way you talk.
Nonsense! You'll have a good laugh about it yet. Look, Sheila, I think you'd better ask Gerald for that ring you gave him, shouldn't you? Then you'll feel better.
You're pretending everything's just as it was before.
I'm not.
No, but these others are.
Well, Sheila, isn't it? We've been had, that's all.
So nothing really happened. So there's nothing to be sorry for, nothing to learn. We can all go back behaving just as it was.
Well, why shouldn't we after all?
I tell you why. Whoever that inspector was, it was anything but a joke. You knew it then. You began to learn something. And now you've stopped. You're ready to go on just as it was.
Oh, and you're not going to do the same, eh?
No. No, because I remember what he said. How he looked and how he made me feel. Fire and blood and anguish. And it frightens me the way you talk. And I can't listen to it anymore.
I must agree with Sheila. It frightens me too.
Well, just go to bed then and don't stand there being all hysterical.
Arthur, they're overtired. In the morning they'll be just as amused as we are.
Everything's alright now, Sheila. What about this ring then?
No, not yet, Gerald. It's too soon and I must think.
Now look at the pair of them. Eric and Sheila, the famous younger generation who know it all. They can't even take a damn joke. Oh, I'll get that. Yes, hello, Mr. Birling speaking. What? That was the police. A girl has just died on her way to the infirmary after swallowing some disinfectant. And the police inspector's on his way here to ask us some questions.